In this video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 mobile RPGs to play in 2025. I know it might come as a surprise to some people, but the fact is that mobile gaming is actually the biggest gaming platform in the world today. And it's really not that astonishing since we all carry our mobile devices with us all the time, and it's really easy to just pull out your phone and play something. The problem is, with so many mobile games out there, it can be tough to find the really good ones, especially with the flood of so many cash grab and so-so titles. That's why I've put together a list that not only highlights some of the best and greatest mobile games, but a list that also includes some timeless classics that have stood the test of time. In no particular order, let's get into them now. The first game on our list is Wuthering Waves. Wuthering Waves is kind of new as it was released earlier this year. It's an open-world action RPG from Kuro Games that takes you into the chaotic world of Solaris 3, a post-apocalyptic world which is filled with a lot of monsters and mysteries. You'll first be playing as a rover, an amnesiac waking up in the middle of nowhere. You'll soon be discovered by a group called the Midnight Riders, and from there you'll go on adventures to try and uncover Rover's missing memories while meeting new characters that you can later pull when you decide to draw later. The game has that mix of sci-fi elements and old world vibes. One of the coolest things about Wuthering Waves is its combat system. It probably has the best combat system among all the gacha games into the genre because of how you'll need to time your dodges and parries to actually survive in the game. It starts out pretty simple, but it quickly gets more interesting when newer characters get included in your team because of the way they affect your dodges, parries, and special team-based skills. Plus, there are these things called echoes, which are kind of like spirits that you can summon or even transform into during fights. How you get around is also really fun, and you can run, glide, grapple, and even wall run across some beautifully designed environments, just like in Breath of the Wild. There's a lot to do in Wuthering Waves, like solving puzzles and farming bosses. There's even a game mode called the Elusive Realm, which has a roguelike twist to it. There are some rough edges though, like a few localization issues and whatnot, but overall Wuthering Waves is something to consider if you like something a bit more fast-paced. Also, if you're planning to pick the game up, you could use our guides to help you get you started. Up next is Banner Saga. Banner Saga is one of those games you'll think about if someone asks you for a good tactical RPG for a mobile phone. It's a tactical RPG with a gripping emotional story that takes place in a Norse-inspired world. You'll be managing a caravan, making decisions that affect both your story and your team's survival. What's surprising is how well it all translates to mobile. You'll be making tough choices in both conversations and in combat, and it feels almost the same as if you were playing on PC. The soundtrack is hauntingly beautiful too, and the visuals capture the cold, desolate mood of the game, making it feel amazing even on a smaller screen. What makes Banner Saga stand out is how the story and combat blend together so well. The choices you make are huge. Combat itself is pretty straightforward, where you'll be balancing health and armor, deciding which target to take down effectively. Banner Saga is a bit less complex than some other tactical RPGs, but it's the perfect fit for this kind of game where the main focus is really on the narrative. If you've never been into story-heavy games, this one might change your mind. It's the kind of game that keeps you hooked, wanting to know what happens next in the story, all while planning your next move in battle. Up next on the list is Torchlight Infinite, which is one of the best ARPGs you can play on your mobile phone at the moment. This game has been growing and evolving since its launch in 2023, and it honestly looks way different now compared to when it first launched. It gets regular updates, and some of its seasonal mechanics are pretty cool, like the Black Sails pirate vibes with epic battles and bosses, or Whispering Mist Twist, where you navigate through the mist in a high-risk, high-reward minigame. What's neat about this is that these mechanics don't usually disappear when the seasons end, they tend to stick around. What makes Torchlight Infinite really solid, though, is how the devs prioritize player feedback. They've been changing stuff that players aren't happy with, like how they're letting you grind for the heroes instead of just locking them behind a paywall. They've also been rolling out quality-of-life updates like loot filters, crafting tools, and even in-game hero ranking system, where you can peek at other players' builds for some inspiration. If you have an ARPG itch, Torchlight Infinite might be able to scratch it with its fast-paced gameplay along with regular updates that keep the game feeling fresh. Next on our list is King Arthur Legends Rise. It's a pretty new turn-based RPG from Netmarble, who coincidentally is the sponsor of this video. If you guys like what you see with King Arthur Legends Rise, or you want more information about it, you can check out our other video that's dedicated to this, or you can use the link below to support the channel and check out the game that is absolutely free. King Arthur Legends Rise is in the vein of games like Summoner's War, Epic 7, and Dislight, and has its own take on the classic Arthurian legend. The game was built using the Unreal Engine 5, and it looks amazing, and the gameplay pulls you in. You play as a young King Arthur wielding Excalibur and set out on an epic journey full of turn-based battles with your legendary allies, and a story steeped in Arthurian lore. The game also has that structured story progression that makes it fun for players who enjoy story-driven gameplay. What really makes this game stand out is how it lets you cross-play with people from different platforms. As a mobile game, getting the chance to play something you usually play on the PC is honestly really great. They also have their own way of letting you customize your characters through their relic system, which lets your heroes switch up their abilities depending on the gear they equip. Plus, you get to build up your own version of Camelot, and that's a huge bonus if you're into city building light. It kind of gives you a nice progression system outside of battles. As I mentioned earlier, the game is strictly free to play and will require some intense grinding if you don't spend any money, but it also has some of the most complex character mechanics anywhere on the market. If you're into Arthurian Legends, or you're just looking for a turn-based RPG to play on your mobile phone, King Arthur Legends Rise might be worth checking out. The next game on our list is a shocker. Who knew there is actually Divinity Original Sin 2 for iOS? This game, which was released by Larian Studios in 2017, has become the gold standard for turn-based RPGs, and for a very good reason. The game doesn't hold your hand or force you down a specific path. You can solve problems however you want. You can talk your way out of conflict, sneak past enemies, or blow everything up in a glorious firestorm, and there are only so few games out there that let you have this much freedom. What really makes the mobile version worth getting is how it's cross-save compatible. You can continue where you left off while on the go, and while you're out and about, you get to experience the game's combat system, where it pretty much shines the most. DOS 2's combat is pretty smart. It lets you use the environment and elements to your advantage. You can set oil on fire, electrify water, or poison your enemies and yourself if you're not careful. The only downside, though, is that it's not available for Android phones, which will definitely disappoint a lot of people. If you haven't played it yet and you happen to own an iPhone or an iPad, then it's definitely something you should check out. Now for their first MMORPG on our list, Black Desert Mobile brings the massive world of Black Desert Online to your phone, and honestly, it looks pretty damn good for a mobile game. You start by choosing one of 5 classes: Warrior, Ranger, Witch, Giant, or Valkyrie, and then dive into the insanely detailed character customization system that is the trademark of Black Desert Online. What's impressive is how the character customization is pretty much on par with what you'd expect from the PC version of the game. It also does a solid job of walking you through things with a good tutorial, so even if you're new to MMORPGs, it's easy to get into. The combat is pretty much the game's bread and butter, and it's to be expected for something with Black Desert in its name. You'll have a lot of PvE and PvP content to keep you busy for a long time. Besides combat and exploration, Black Desert Mobile includes life skills and other features that add more variety to the game. You can try out fishing, trading, farming, and crafting, all of which still help you grow your character and earn some extra wealth if you're suddenly sick of all the action. There's also the camp system where you can manage workers, upgrade buildings, and produce useful resources to keep things running smoothly. There's plenty of stuff to go around without the combat and exploration. That being said, the PvP in the game is highly lauded, and it's one of the main draws. If you're a fan of MMORPGs, Black Desert Mobile is a solid choice. So the next entry on our list is a certified classic that fans of ARPGs will surely recognize. Titan Quest Legendary Edition on mobile is pretty much the full PC experience, but on your phone. You get the base game plus the Immortal Throne, Ragnarok, and Atlantis expansions. That is a ton of content, and you're looking at around 150 hours of gameplay if you really dive in. It's a bit on the pricier side for a mobile game, but when you think about it, it's a complete package with no ads or microtransactions. If you're a fan of action RPGs but want a more classic RPG experience, this could be your thing. What I find impressive about this version is how they've made it super user-friendly on mobile. The controls are surprisingly smooth with the zoom feature so you can adjust the screen size to your liking. The interface is clean, you get quick access to all the important stuff like your character's abilities, inventory, and health, and one of the best features is being able to hide dropped items during fights, which cuts down on-screen clutter and lets you focus on the action. It's these little tweaks that make the mobile experience feel just right, even for someone like me who's not a huge fan of touch controls. The game runs smoothly on budget phones, so if you're into RPGs with a lot of content, this is a solid choice. I frankly play this all the time on my iPhone 11 with no issues. Yes, my phone is that old. Up next is Zenless Zone Zero. Zenless Zone Zero is another mobile action RPG from MiHoYo, mixing action, JRPG, puzzle, and visual novel elements into a pretty good package. Combat doesn't look too bad though. You'll get to chain attacks and pull off some satisfying parries, especially in the tougher endgame content. It also has a few cool mechanics like elemental reactions and status effects. It's not as complicated as something like Genshin Impact, but it still kind of encourages experimentation with different combos and character abilities. There's plenty of stuff to do in the game, and it also regularly has this unique set of minigames that lets you take a break from the main story now and then. The game's comic-inspired aesthetic kind of sets it apart visually. Performance is also mostly solid, though there are some occasional frame drops, especially on mobile. So if you're looking for a gacha game that has that casual feel to it, maybe you could give this a shot. Also, check out our guides on the game while you're at it, as they can help you get off to a good start. Up next is a game that was heavily inspired by the Diablo franchise. Undecember is a free-to-play hack-and-slash RPG that is a bit different from its peers because there are no set classes. Instead, you get to choose different weapons, and each one unlocks its own set of skills and abilities. So if you want to be a mage or a warrior, you just pick your weapon and go for it, which is pretty nice because it gives you flexibility in how you play. One of the mechanics of the game is the runecast system, which lets you link runes to your skills that completely change how they work. Like a simple fireball can turn into a huge explosion or even shoot out multiple fireballs. It has that level of customization to it, and it's something you can mix and match with other skills as well. Then there's the Zodiac system, which is basically a passive skill tree. You invest points into different attributes like strength, dexterity, or intelligence, and it helps you shape your character's stats. And on top of that, there's a mastery system and gear enchantment, so you're constantly upgrading your character. What many of its players appreciate about Undecember is that it doesn't have any of those season resets. The game doesn't wipe your progress, but instead it just keeps adding harder content, so your character gets stronger over time. It does sound refreshing, especially if you're tired of games that reset all of your hard work every few months. All in all, Undecember is a lot of fun. The combat is smooth, the customization is deep, and you get to experiment with different builds and playstyles. If you're looking for your next mobile ARPG, you might want to check this one out. Last but not least on our list is Albion Online. On mobile, it's interesting because it lets you take the MMO on the go. Since it's cross-platform, you can easily pick up where you left off on PC, but the controls can be a bit tricky at first, especially if you're used to the precision of a mouse and keyboard. The touch controls feel a little clumsy in comparison, especially in intense PvP battles, but once you adjust, it's really not too bad, particularly for tasks like gathering or farming, which aren't as demanding as PvP. And there's a lot of stuff to do outside of combat too. You can gather anything from wood and ore to rare materials for crafting high-tier gear, tools, and consumables to use or sell. Since the economy is completely player-driven, everything in the market was made by another player, and you'll be able to influence the market in some ways as well. Farming is a big part of the game, and you can grow crops, raise animals, and manage your own personal island. Your island acts as your home base where you can build stuff, hire workers, and set up a solid income to keep your adventures going. Frankly, for a mobile game, it's pretty great. On a mid-tier phone, the game runs smoothly, and surprisingly, it doesn't use up too much data, so you can even play without worrying that you'll get charged too much. Honestly, if you're just farming or doing smaller group activities, it's definitely playable on your mobile phone. The main draw of this game is how it gives you the chance to play while away from your PC. If you suddenly need to go somewhere but you can't stay away from the original MMO for too long, then this mobile game is definitely for you. So that wraps up our video on the top 10 mobile RPGs to play in 2025. I hope you guys found this list useful. There are a lot of great games on here. Some of them might be unexpected to some of you out there. Maybe you didn't know that there were mobile versions of some of these games. And once again, big shout out to Netmarble for sponsoring this video. If you like the look of King Arthur Legends Rise, be sure to check out that game. It's free to play, and use our link below to support the channel. What do you guys make of this list? Did I miss any important titles? Let me know in the comments below.